Welcome to the Web Design Business Podcast with your host, Josh Hall, helping you build a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, my friend. Welcome into episode 236 of the Web Design Business Podcast. In this one, we're going to dive into what is absolutely one of the hottest topics in web design, and that is niching down or going niche. Now, when you think about niching, I'm guessing you're probably like me, at least most of you are like me, and thinking immediately your mind goes to like, I'm going to build websites for dentists, or I'm going to build marketing sites for hair salons or something like that. But what I've learned over the years, and one thing that we're going to talk about in this episode, is that that is one form of niching, but there's actually a lot of counterintuitive ways to niche down so you don't have to be a generalist and work with everyone and do everything, but you also don't have to put yourself in a box. And for this topic, I'm so excited to bring on one of my close entrepreneurial colleagues and one of my students, actually. This is Steve Shramm, who is best known for the subscription web design model. Now, Steve, if you have not met him, as I mentioned, he was a repeat guest. He was on in episode 109, where he really pulled the curtain back on his business model of subscription web design, which, come to find out, is a form of niching down. And he's an entrepreneur through and through. He's got a lot of different businesses, all of which he has used the different variations of niching to be able to grow a lot of different businesses at the same time. So it is a very effective strategy. And again, what we're going to dive into here are kind of the counterintuitive approaches that you may not think about or you may not realize are niching. Again, so you don't have to work with anyone and everyone, but you don't have to put yourself in a box. So I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm excited for you to hear Steve's point of view and what's worked for him and his businesses. Again, I think it's going to help you no matter if you have never thought about niching, but maybe want to do it eventually, or if you're at a place right now where you're like, okay, I'm doing too many services for too many different people. I need to reel this in. I think this conversation is going to be the one for you. Now, we talk about a lot of different links in this one. Those are all going to be linked up at the show notes for this episode on episode 236. You can go to joshhall.co/236 to get all those. What I'm going to recommend is that you check Steve out at steveshramm.co. Great extension. And then also his agency site is northmacservices.com. It's a great example of an agency website with really good intentional copy and a great layout. I recommend checking that out as a good example to follow. So without further ado, here's Steve. Let's talk counterintuitive approaches to niching your web design services. Steve, welcome back onto the podcast, my friend. It's good to see you.
Man, it's a total pleasure to be here. I feel so lucky to be in the ranks of those multiple guests, So,
well, I mean, that feeling is well earned, I guess, because you have done some incredible stuff, man. It's been so cool to see what you've done, even since I interviewed you last. So you were episode 109. I highly recommend everyone go back to that one because we dive a little more into your story and how you came into the subscription web design models. I don't want to necessarily rehash the whole thing here. Sure. I think what we're going to dive into in this one, we could go into so many topics, but the idea of niching, that is so prevalent right now and a very hot topic. And you've done some really cool things in this. So I figure that's kind of what we could dive into. But man, Steve, you've been on it, dude. I mean, you've really done some cool things. Your web design agency website, northmacservices.com, has some really good examples of like the good things to do with conversion-based design. You're getting into the course world now. You kind of have a personal brand. So I'm going to ask you the same question I've been asking everybody. When somebody asks you what you do now, what do you say? Because you have several websites you can point people to.
Yeah, this is getting harder and harder by the day, isn't it, to answer this question? And I suppose, seeing as how you are one of the few podcasts that I listen to pretty much every episode, I should have had an answer prepared for this. That's really, really great. But I don't. I typically say that I own a website design agency, right? It's very rare that I get into the online coaching stuff. And like, I actually own a business now in the music industry as well that helps songwriters and stuff. And so I basically, it depends on who I'm talking to. It's just kind of a theme, right? But it's typically either I'm an entrepreneur and I own a few businesses, or I own a website design and marketing agency. Those are sort of the ways that I go about it. I have gotten away from for a while now, saying that I am a website designer, because very rarely is that true, right? It's very rare that I'm actually doing website design work in my business anymore. I'm mostly just, doing the sales calls and managing the team and creating the systems and processes. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you really pretty quickly, it seemed like, you're an entrepreneur and a business owner at heart. The first interview that you were on in episode 109, you kind of shared what was in your past and in your history to bring you to that point. So I'm not surprised that you scaled and that you became the business owner pretty quickly. But the key thing to remember, I think, for a lot of people when they get to that point is you could not do all of your side hustles and passion projects and other brands if you were doing all the design work in your agency. So it's like,
that's right.
You do kind of have to choose. Like, you could do everything. You totally can. As you know, my story, Steve, I was doing a lot of the design for years, but I learned in order to grow this brand, I had to scale and had to not do everything. So that, I think, kind of interesting leads us to like the customer type, because I'm curious, man, with your agency in particular, did you start scaling before you knew your customer really well? Or did you figure out your ideal customer and then create the processes and systems in order to scale?
Yeah, that is such a good question. To be honest, I feel like it's more of a continuum. So here's the thing with scaling, and I'll just come right out and say up front, like, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do this. Some people are obviously more attuned to the business side of it than they are the technician side of it. Plug for the book E-Myth. If you haven't read it, it's life-changing. Definitely a good book. But for sure, not everyone is going to want to get into managing people and doing all of that. I actually took some advice that I heard from multiple places, so I couldn't pinpoint exactly where I heard it the first time. But I took the advice that you should start to scale before you feel like you're ready. And that, I can honestly say, that piece of advice changed my life. I was looking, it's like you mentioned, it seems like you did this rather quickly. Well, that's true. As soon as it even started to look like it could, I could make it work, I started looking for somebody that I could plug into the processes that I had already developed. And I think that's another thing too that I did, although I don't know how consciously I did it, but I created some early checklists and processes just for me so that I wouldn't have to think about it, how to do it every single time. I would just create the system the first time. I've always been a template kind of guy. It's like, if I have to do the work once for a template, I'm going to try to automate it the next time. I've always thought that way. And so when it came to scaling, it was sort of natural. From the first day I brought someone on, I was able to point to a series of checklists and videos and things that I had made and say, hey, look, this is how we do things here. And by we, it's me, but now it's you, right? This is how our business has created success in the work that we do. And so I'm plugging you into that process. And now more than anything, as I'm going forward, I would say I'm just leaning into that even more, creating more systems and processes, more SOPs and things of that nature. But from the beginning, it was more about, like, bring people on before you think you're ready. Now, to answer your specific question, did I get my target customer sort of nailed down first before I started scaling? How did that work? To be honest, I am very much a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. Entrepreneurs tend to be this way. Yeah. I throw a lot of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And I want to be careful to say this in a way that's not prideful, because it's not me. I'm a Christian. I believe the Lord has really guided me through all of this, and I'm really not ashamed of that. At the same time, I would say that all of anybody who hated on me over the years or thought, oh man, why do you buy all these domain names? Why do you start all these businesses? Why do you try all these different things? Well, the reason is because I want to see what works, and not everything works. And you have to be okay with things that don't work. So for example, let's make this practical for web designers. So I decided, as you can imagine, the advice to niche down is out there, right? It's just floating around. It's been floating around for years. It's nothing new. Niching is nothing new. And whenever I first sort of decided to do that, I just kind of looked at my current client base and I said, okay, well, I have a lot of people who fall into that coach, consultant, online business kind of world. And a part of the reason for that is I was in a lot of groups like Michael Hyatt's Platform University, Dan Miller's 48 Days group. Anyway, groups like this that were focused on online business. And I would just sort of be helpful in those groups, much like the advice that me and others give about being helpful in Facebook groups and stuff like that to help get clients. Well, I was doing the same thing. The difference being these were paid membership groups, much like your club. And the difference is, again, there is that they're not web designers. They're people who are just trying to put together a blog that turns them into a content creator or something. And they kept getting hung up with the technical stuff. So a lot of my early clients were me just being helpful in there. And then those relationships turning into client relationships. And so I looked at that.
Great example, by the way. I want to hang on that just for a second. A great example of like how to find really good clients without doing ads or something, like join a community where your clients hang out at and you can be the person. Anyway, that's a great example of how to do that well.
It's truly one of my top pieces of advice. It's worked so well for me. We could talk for hours on that, just itself, but it's been a very helpful thing. So I looked at my current client base and I said, okay, well, it looks like I'm working mostly with coaches and all this. So I'm just going to go into that niche. That's what I'm going to do. And so I built a whole separate website, took elements from my current one called Coach Marketing Company. So it was like Coach Marketing. I don't even remember the domain, but it was like coachmarketing.co or something like that. I mean, it was a pretty sweet domain. I created the Marketing for Coaches podcast. I mean, I went all in with that. And that ultimately didn't stick. It didn't, for some reason, it didn't work. And so did I just give up? Oh, I failed. Web design. Oh, it didn't work. No, I stopped emailing and redirecting and everything from that domain name. I stopped marketing that domain name. I changed the name of the podcast. I went back to North Mac Services and I figured it out and tried again. Now, today, to kind of fast forward, and then we can fill in some of the gaps if you have questions about that. Today, the way that we niche is two ways. We niche in the big picture with what would be called category design. And with category design, basically you're trying to create a new category. Think Salesforce. Okay. I know none of us are Salesforce, right? But just let's point to that example. Salesforce created the cloud category. They named the old thing and called it on-premise. And then suddenly on-premise was the old news. The new thing was cloud computing, right? Which basically Salesforce invented that. They created a new category, right? So in that sense, we're basically trying to say that we created the category of subscription web design. Now, did we? I don't know. I sure couldn't point to another example of somebody else doing it when I started it. So as far as I know, I created it. I own the domain name, subscriptionwebdesign.com. I'm the only one, or one of the only ones that I can find really talking about it. And so here we are.
I can't believe it wasn't taken.
I know. It's really crazy.
I didn't take it and I would have charged you for it. No, I'm just kidding. But that is incredible.
Yeah. But then, so that's kind of the big picture. And then I would say from the smaller picture, the way that we're niching down is it actually is still true that most of our clients are some form of coach or consultant or course creator or whatever. That's still true. And basically we're growing a reputation for building more complex websites. Now we still build marketing websites, but most of our websites, if they are marketing, typically they're going to lead into a sales funnel or e-commerce or some sort of more complex angle there. Beyond that, we're doing a lot of course creation and membership site builds, which is a good niche because a lot of people are scared to touch those things. So that's a very long answer to your question.
Well, the reason I asked that, it's good context there because I did not realize how involved you were with some of those like premium communities where there's going to be some people probably paying a decent amount monthly or annually or whatever it is to be a part of these communities. So first of all, that's like a weed out right there for really good clients as far as like going niche with a certain type of industry, whether it's a coach or consultant or whatever. But that helped give me an idea of like, you start with it really for you, the subscription model came very quickly. Again, episode 109, go back and listen to that to hear how you came to that model. But you essentially started your business with the subscription model. The next gap to fill in, the piece to fill in was like, what type of clients are going to be good with this? I don't know if hair salons necessarily would go for us. Maybe. I don't know if like auto mechanic shops. Maybe, some of those might, but coaches, consultants, people who need the ongoing touch for sure, more than a brochure site, are probably going to be much more interested in a subscription model. And that's why I was curious. That's why I was wondering, how much did you have in place before you found your ICA, your ideal customer avatar? How much after? Because for you, like you said, you're getting into complex sites. You're doing, of course, brochure marketing style sites, but what do those lead to? You just said it, Steve. They're going to lead to email marketing. They're going to lead to lead generators. They're going to lead to downloads, courses, memberships, e-commerce. To put those systems in place, that is, there's a lot to that. So, I mean, what has that evolved for you? Like, I guess the question is, a succinct question that I have would be, did your systems start out simple and just continue to evolve? Or did you know pretty quickly with coaches and consultants that it was going to be courses, memberships, complex style sites?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So let me zoom out just for a second and create a little more context. So I impose my will upon anybody who engages me for client work. So a lot of my students are, of course, coming from the world of traditional, 50 down up front, 50 on the back end, or just whatever those traditional models I'll call them. And so because of that, many of them are having trouble, not having trouble. That's maybe the wrong way to say it. Maybe that's not fair. Many of them are still giving the option, right? Many of them are treating subscription web design as an option they can add on and offer to some clients. And by the way, I think that's fine. I talk about that in some of my materials. I mean, I think it's totally fine to add it on as an option. I don't have that problem because I never had the issue when I was working with a buddy of mine, again, in that studio. And if you go back and listen to that episode, you'll have more context, but basically we would create sites for the people that we recorded in our studio. I never set those prices. And so it was like $500 or something crazy. And we had to do like a lot of PHP coding and all of that. So I got paid very little and just did what my part of it, which was mostly the content stuff. When I started out for myself, I think I only charged a flat fee, like $400 for like the first website that I did. Literally every other site was subscription web design. Okay. I started the company out with that because I was afraid, just to be honest. I was afraid to charge people thousands of dollars. So I started out doing it that way. And so from then on, I've never had a problem. When someone engages me, it's not, oh, well, yeah, I'll get you a quote. It's going to be, this X thousands of dollars, or I have the subscription model offering over here. It's not that. I say, so just so you know, here's how we do business. And I'll go right into a sales story. It's an unfortunate story, but it's the story of how one of our early sites got hacked and redirected to a pornography site. And it was a site for a church. So that's never good. And Google blacklisted it. And so just a bunch of bad things. And I decided that the reason for that is because we weren't paying attention to the site and neither were they. So from the very get-go, I was like, somebody has to pay attention to these sites that we're putting on the internet. And the only way I'm going to keep caring about it is if you keep paying me every month to care about it. So I decided that that's just how we're going to work. So I don't care if you come to me and you're a hair salon or you're a mechanic or you're a course creator or you're the president. I don't care who you are. I'm going to say, okay, cool. So this is the way we work. And here are some of our monthly options. I think you fall into this category. Do you agree? And, I've got a shed company on it. I've got, again, plenty of coaches and consultants on it. I've got people in different industries. I've had HVAC people on it. So I think you're only limited to that if you limit yourself to it. I think otherwise you can sort of impose your will, and maybe some people won't sign up because they don't want that, and that's totally fine.
So you're not niching though by like industry, by like a certain type of industry. Is it more?
That's right.
Is it fair to say niching down for you has been more of like not a personality, but like a yeah, well, I don't know. That's the question. Like here's the question, Steve. What does niching look like for you? Because again, I do want to follow back on the question about the complexity thing, because I'm curious about that. But from a high level, what does niching look like for you?
Yeah. Well, again, it's a difficult question to answer because I've tried. So I define niching. This is not how I define niching, but like for me, I'm niching down if the headline in my website calls out the person, right? Who I'm niching down to. That's sort of the quick and easy, quick and dirty way. So how many times over the years has my headline changed to something like, we build awesome websites for coaches and course creators? It's been that multiple times, and I've just changed it out and some of the language on the site. So yeah, that's correct. Right now, you're not going to come to our website and see something that lets you know that we work primarily with coaches, course creators, consultants, and things like that. In fact, something that we're testing is the language on the site right now is actually very geared towards subscription web design. I'm actually trying to, again, carve out the niche in that way, in the sense of the business model is part of what we're niching with. In terms of the complexity, though, that is I would say it's a niching point for us because, like, for example, we talk on our blog, we talk about WordPress, we talk about, lots of general stuff, but we also have a specific category for e-learning, which we're populating often with clients. So we do spend an inordinate amount of time talking about membership sites, learning websites, and some e-commerce stuff as well, because those fall into the more complex categories. Yeah. And so we're sort of niching down, and that is a way of niching, by the way. Niching is not just by industry. You can niche in your business model. You can niche in the type of work you do. And so I would say we're doing more of those things. We're niching down in the type of web design work that we do more than anything else. And we'll still accept projects of all various kinds. We'll accept the marketing website, and that's fine. But better for me, if you're like D, one of my clients who, we have a marketing site, but we're also in the middle of a huge e-learning platform built for her as well. So I like it when there's both.
So this is fascinating. This is what I was hoping to get to was just what you said, Steve, the different ways to niche. Because typically, I think most everyone in the web design world, especially when you think about niching down, most people's mind goes to like, I'm going to build template dentist websites where, you just have a template and that's your niche. That's your niche. Yeah. But no, you're right. There's so many different ways to go about it, but that also makes it that much more complex. Then, I'm answering so many questions, and I am myself sometimes, because I didn't necessarily niche down in exact ways that we're talking about with like how to do it, when to do it. Do you niche by, like, do I just build e-commerce sites? Do I just build course sites? Do you have a hodgepodge like you do? There's a lot of different ways to go about it, but I think the key is to probably do, like you said, throw a few things at the wall, see what sticks. It's my recommendation. See what you like to do. Some people love doing e-commerce sites. Some people hate it. If you hate it, don't do it. There's plenty. Partner with you, Steve. Send them your way, and then vice versa. You can do what you want to do. Focus on strategy, copy, whatever you want to do. But you can niche without saying like, "Hey, I'm Steve with North Mac Services, and we build sites for coaches." That's not the case. Your site, depending, I know you guys are tweaking it, so it's worthwhile just keeping an eye on it. But I would advise everyone to go to northmacservices.com just to keep an eye on like what you're doing, what's working for you guys, because you do have some really good things that are more about attracting a person in a project rather than attracting a category. That's the way correct. I see it. That's the way I see it. Even if I can just shout out this part of your website, which I absolutely love. There's a lot of things I love about your site right now. Now, for folks, we're not looking at this visually, but your headline is web design with peace in mind. So automatically it's people who are probably nervous or stressed about getting online and are overwhelmed. So it's like, okay, that's cool. There's a video of you. Absolutely recommend that. And then my favorite aspect of what you have right now, Steve, is the what we're about section. Subscription pricing. Talk a little bit about that, why you do that. Radical over communication. That is solving a huge need that most people have with web designers. You talk about writing and lots of it. You talk about the blogging and how you actually do content writing. Marketing nerds, talk about what you like about marketing and your interest in that, and then education about empowering the client. Those 5 things right there are a genius way to like attract the right person, which is a form of niching. So it's interesting.
That's correct. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because that is very intentionally the purpose of that section. So and this is controversial. Maybe. I feel like among web designers, and we're among friends here, but this is maybe controversial among web designers. So I don't have a portfolio on my site. And actually, I have an article in my Learning Hub, my blog. I call it a Learning Hub. I have an article in my Learning Hub explaining why I don't have a portfolio on my site that I often send to clients when they ask if I have a portfolio. And of course, I'm still willing to send them links. But whereas most designers, and by the way, again, I'm not saying this is perfect. I am actually going to experiment in 2023 with maybe adding a little bit of a portfolio, maybe more case study driven portfolio. But
I was going to say, I have a thought on that, but please continue. I'll share.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm not, again, this is a growing thing. It's not over yet, but what I'm more about, and I stole this, if you will, from the Basecamp guys, Jason Fried, David Heinemeier Hansen. I'm a big fan of their work. And, in 1999, when everybody else was doing the same thing, they were building the most flashy, complex sites they could. They had a basic text website, and they still did like clients with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of business in 1999. Why is that? Well, they shared their ideas. So my site, NorthMax Services, is more about, here are our ideas. If you agree with us, do business with us. You're going to have a good time. Versus, oh, here's what we can do, flashy whiz bang stuff. And I'll tell you why. And this is the controversial part. In 2023, you do have to have an eye for design. Always. I recommend taking Josh's course on web design. I own it. It's a fantastic course. Love it. But it's just not that hard to make a decent looking website with the tools that we have available today. I mean, the top tier 1% are like, again, set themselves apart. Like if you're doing super custom coding and all that, if you're starting with the foundation of Divi, using good premium plugins and have a good amount of practice, it's really not that hard to design a good looking site. And with Divi, you're so flexible. You can make it look like whatever you want to. If whatever the client wants the site to look like, as long as you have the right people in your corner, you can make it look that way. What is different though about everybody is their ideas about the way they see business, about the way they see the world. I've got articles on my site explaining how, like, thinking through why there's such a problem with ghosting. I can't tell you how many clients that I talk to the problem is the reason they started or they found me or they come to me is because the last person that they had ghosted them, left them. I had this conversation last Thursday. Like, seriously, it's all the time. And so I want to build my business around one of the concepts is radical over communication. You might think, well, that's not a niche, Steve. Radical over communication isn't hair salons. You can't niche down based on that, but I can because it's so rare. Nobody is focused on it. And not only are they not focused on it, we don't just say it, we actually do it. So when you on board with us as a client, you get into our Basecamp. I'm having conversations. Check this out. This is radical. I'm having conversations with clients. I had a client who called me because she's so overwhelmed by all the stuff so we're building a very complex, we're about 250 hours into this build for a very, very complex learning site, extremely complex. And it's this particular client's third try. Wow. She has spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. It is her third try with other people. So she's used 2 other people before. We are now building it. It's her third try. And it's very, very complex. So I'm getting calls like, oh my gosh, Sam, he's my web designer. Sam is so amazing. He is so awesome. But like, I am so overwhelmed with everything that he's got for me to do. And it's like, she's like, I've been working with one-on-one clients and I haven't had a chance to come in and take a look at things and I'm a few weeks behind. Can you just help me navigate this? So I'm getting calls, which has never happened as far as I'm aware. I'm getting calls that are like, oh my gosh, you guys are communicating too much. Can you help me parse this a little bit? So I would rather border on that. I would rather communicate and feel like people think we're still here rather than leaving them, ghosting them or just stopping communication or not having good communication. And that's a way of niching. If that's something that you're primarily committed to, don't just like be afraid of it. Use that in your marketing. Put it out there. I don't know if you've read Mike Michalowicz's Clockwork.
I haven't yet. It's on the list.
Yeah. Read
I've been able to read like 2 books in the past 2 years with 3
I got you.
little ones now. But
I totally understand. I totally understand. So Clockwork and E-Myth, the one I mentioned earlier, are very similar but very different. Both great books. Clockwork, they talk about the concept called the queen bee role. And the queen bee role it's not like, oh, you're in web design. Well, then obviously designing the websites is your queen bee role. You would think that, but that's not the case. You can actually choose what it is. And it's the thing that moves your business forward. Whatever makes your business different doesn't exist without this. And you can declare this. So, and then what you have to do is you declare the QBR, the queen bee role, and then you have to protect and serve the QBR. So the QBR in our business is radical over communication. That is the one thing. Even if we're a week or 2 or 3 late on designs that we're delivering, if we're not doing even a good job building the websites or whatever, I mean, none of those things are typically true, but let's just say, at least if we're communicating, then the business is successful as far as I'm concerned. And as long as we're able to keep in communication. And so this is why I hire people, and I'm very selective with who I hire. I don't just hire people who can design good. Why? Again, because my controversial take is that lots of people can design good. I don't so much care if you're a good designer, although I do, because I love the design work we're putting out, and certainly we're doing the best work ever.
You're looking for the intangibles, though, the stuff that you can't train easily, right?
That's right. I'm looking for when I reach out to this guy for the first time, what does his reply look like to me? Did he speak great English? Not only that, was he very thorough? Did he put the minimum that he needed to, or did he over communicate? And so I hire great writers and over communicators. And then when they come into my world and I introduce them to, hey, by the way, this is our philosophy, and they have to like agree to that and sign off on that to work with me. Then it just makes the whole system work. So that's part of how we're niching. I think it's very relevant to it.
It definitely is. In fact, I think you helped me come to the perfect title for this episode, which is going to be Counterintuitive Ways to Niche in Web Design.
I love that.
These are different ways. Again, like we talked about earlier, it's not generally something you would think about, like the verbiage in your website. You wouldn't think about that helping you niche. But I've actually experienced this on a personal level for my site with joshhall.co. As soon as I came up with my podcast tagline, so you build a web design business so you have freedom and a lifestyle you love. As soon as I came up with that, because it dawned on me that for me, those were the two things I was after and I achieved with web design, is I was free to work when and where I wanted, have an uncapped salary, and I could live the life I wanted, which served me in a variety of different life phases. As soon as I came up with that, it has helped me attract the right people. Who I'm not attracting are the college entrepreneur douchebags who are wanting to get to 7 figures and work 120 hours a week. You know what I mean? Like, that's not who I'm serving, and that's not who is going to be ideal for me. Who I'm serving are people who are like lifestyle entrepreneurs, digital nomads, people who are working from home, people who have families, who are in places where they want to build a business that suits them and their lifestyle. So I say that to say, unintentionally, putting that on my website after I came up with my podcast tagline helped me niche to get the right ideal customer just by adding that verbiage in. My courses didn't change. The trainings didn't change. I didn't change. It was just the content. Isn't that amazing how subtle messaging makes the biggest difference with who you attract?
Oh, 1000%. I mean, I want to talk about that with respect to the music business that I have, and I think it'll be a valuable sort of tie into that. But before I do, I feel it's important to say that your podcast 1000% delivers, and your courses and your memberships, I mean, all of it, and it 1000% delivers on that. It's a really great testimony. It's that I told 2 people just last week, I forget who it was, but I told 2 different people in different contexts last week about how important it is that, like this week, I'm working reduced hours this week. Now, admittedly, yesterday was like ultra busy. I worked more than I wanted to, but especially Monday and Tuesday, I worked some serious reduced hours, and I also plan to try to do that today as well. And
we are recording the week after Christmas, by the way, for everyone.
Yeah. There you go. So I'm working some reduced hours, and why? Well, I wanted to play some stinking video games, and I don't do that very often. And I wanted to play some Lego Marvel superheroes too. And I was thinking about this and talking with with people and saying, for me, it's not about the Lamborghinis. It's not about the big houses. It's not about the fancy cars. It's not about a huge bank account, although all of those things I'm sure are nice. For me, building a business is about the fact that if I want to take the morning off to play Marvel Lego superheroes instead of be in front of a place. Now, that's not to say I don't have meetings and I don't have commitments. I have plenty to do. Trust me, plenty. But if I want to rearrange my day and work reduced hours for a week or whatever, I can do that, and the business still runs. And that's what it's about for me. Those two things you mentioned, right? Freedom and lifestyle. It is highly about that for me. And it's just amazing that we've been able to build a business that does that. And niching and scaling are two of the things that helped us to get to that point. Otherwise, and again, like I say, it's not for everybody, but if you don't make the decision to do that, then every dime you make will be dependent on you sitting in front of a computer for the rest of your life. And if you're okay with that, then fine. I'm personally not okay with that. I'd rather have the freedom and flexibility to build other things. Okay. So I just wanted to plug your resource. If you're listening to this, you probably don't need a plug, but get the courses, join the membership, plug in, because I'm not the only person who has exactly what I've just shared who can say that. Like different people that I've been working with and that I have got to meet in Josh's communities are seeing the same exact thing that I am as a result of being in this.
Yeah. So, by the way, side note, that's a benefit too of not just my programs, but anytime you join a community with other designers and entrepreneurs, is you'll start partnering with people. If it's under the umbrella of a business or a brand, like for me, with it being very clear, freedom and lifestyle you love, everyone who's in my courses, a high percentage of them are just like you said, Steve. Yeah. So when you partner with other people, they're going to be similar. They're going to be on like the same wavelength. So yeah, great point. I love that you said that.
It's true. And he didn't pay me to say it, I promise, but it's true. It has been it's been a life-changing really for me. So, as it relates,
I'm sorry, Steve, I had one thought that I just don't want to lose, because I said I was going to bring it up earlier. For you, this goes back to niching, because you are still technically a generalist as far as category and industries, but you're more niche in business model and client persona and stuff like that.
That's right.
My recommendation, if I can put my coaching shoes on with you, since I'm still your coach technically, what I would do is a success stories page. This is what I'm working on right now. It's not a portfolio. It's not testimonials, and it's not necessarily, it's kind of case study. It's basically case studies, but it's just a little sexier, success stories, because with a handful or even just a few success stories for you in particular, that is going to so eloquently nail down the persona and the results. So not only will you get the right type of persona of the client and project, but the results that you get with some of the people you've been working with. So that would be my recommendation, is because like you said, it's so funny you mentioned that. The episode before this, we talk a lot about this, about how it's beneficial to have portfolio, particularly for more like industry style sites and niche sites. But what's even better are the success stories, the results, because anyone can have a portfolio like mine used to be, where it's like, oh, it's a cool design. And the client said, Josh is great to work with. That's great. But what's way better is I worked with Josh, and in a year's time, my business grew by 25% or whatever. So that would be my recommendation.
So I wonder what your thoughts are on this. And maybe these are two different things. So I actually had a thought based on some conversations that were happening a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month or more ago, on Divi Chat. They were going back and forth, and in between the lines, I saw an opportunity for something that they didn't say out loud. And I thought, oh man, this would fit so well if I did this. And I wonder if this is the thing to do. So I had already thought about doing what you just suggested, the success stories, but instead of having like a page with the success stories, I had thought about keeping it in the context of what I already do well, which is writing a blog. So I thought about doing a client spotlight, in a sense, not a client spotlight, but more of a project spotlight, more of a blog story style, long form. Here's the details of this project. Here's whatever. And it's good marketing actually for us and for the client. We can get lots of social media content from that. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yes. So I actually experienced this on the receiving end with this is how I met Pat Flynn in Smart Passive Income. They did essentially a customer spotlight, which when I say success stories, this is a version of that. case study, client spotlight, client feature, success story, all these things are basically the same thing. Now, the cool thing about this, I would highly recommend it. It does, there's going to be time involved with it because it's likely going to be an interview. You're going to pull things out from it. But what a piece of content to be able to use for months and years. I highly recommend that, Steve. But then your success stories page just is the blog post that they then go to listen to the story. So when I eventually met Pat Flynn, it was because the team at Smart Passive Income interviewed me and did a success story on me. So you could go to smartpassiveincome.com, and if you just search Josh Hall, you'll see an article there about called Success Story, Josh Hall, a designer who's changing lives, one online course at a time. They interviewed me, and it wasn't Pat. It was one of the team members at the time.
Yeah.
Who interviewed me for about 45 minutes about where my business was when I came into Pat's courses and which ones I took, how they helped, and kind of my story. And then Pat read that and then eventually had me on the SPI podcast, which was a huge turning point for me in this business. But It started with that success story, that client spotlight, and that got around. So yes, highly recommend that. I'll make sure we link that in the show notes too, just as an example. This was back in 2020 when they did this, but it is a great example of like how somebody did a success story with me and my business for them, like as a testimonial for them. So yes, 100%, Steve, I recommend doing that.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that then. So then let me return to what we were talking about as it relates to the messaging. I just wanted to make a simple point. So, we had the same thing. So the brief sketch, let's see if I can, this is not going to be an elevator pitch, but it's going to be as close as I can get to it. Me and one of my oldest friends, the son of the guy who owned the recording studio that I used to work in, and go back to the episode 109 to listen to that or watch that. I told this story. He's my best friend in the world. And we started a company together called, I'll just quick shameless plug, called buydemotracks.com. And we have been working on it for about the last year, hardcore. And it's basically what we've settled on is it's basically a marketplace site for independent songwriters to become financially and commercially successful, but also for artists. So it's a really great place where we're having songwriters upload their music and give into this library. And then artists, when they're in an album cycle in the studio ready to record, they can go to our site and filter and find just the song they want. So I think you'll appreciate this. You come from a music background, but imagine now it's a lot of the people we have on there are more like country, bluegrass. So we don't have any metal yet. So you might just have to bear with me on the metaphor a little bit here. But let's say, Josh, that you're in the recording studio and you need a song in the key of F with a medium tempo that's about planes and trains and whatever. You can actually come to our website and filter down and find those exact songs that we have in our library. It's a really game-changing sort of idea. But it didn't click for us because there's a lot of, in the music industry, red tape, unfortunately, it turns out. Record labels especially, and God bless them, I mean, they have a role to play. But record labels oftentimes are very limiting as to what artists are able to do on their own. And so everything changed for us when we realized that slight bit of messaging that needed to change was that our focus is on independent songwriters.
Gotcha.
And,
so immediately
and
that just whittled it down to independent, freedom-based musicians.
It opened up a new world, and there's lots of those out there. And I don't have time to explain it today, but actually the way that the model is set up, we think it's going to pretty quickly extend to people who are not independent, to people who are on the record label. And sort of like the 2-second reason why is because people are going to find out that it's actually easier and faster and better to get paid for your songs the way that we are suggesting that it happen versus the traditional models. The traditional model is very backdoor. It's very, I almost want to say secretive, even though that's maybe a little too harsh a word. It's very like, deals that happen with people who are connected. Like the little guy doesn't really have a chance to break in is what it boils down to. And with this, we think what's going to happen is we're going to have songwriters getting paid more by artists who are up and coming and want to record their music than they'll ever get paid if a very commercially successful artist already does it. And so we think what's going to happen is eventually we've created competition where it wasn't before. We think eventually even A-list artists are going to be paying songwriters for their songs directly, because why would the A-list songwriter give it to, or why would the songwriter give the song to an A-list artist that they're not going to make any money from if they can sell it to a B or C-list artist and make money from it? So we're flipping the entire game. We think we're going to literally change the music industry. And you might say, well, that's crazy, but
what's that website, Steve?
It's buydemotracks.com. Buydemotracks.com. And it all centers around the idea of the demo, which is basically what a songwriter needs to create a demo in order to pitch their songs to artists. So we're actually allowing people to upload their demos to us or even record them with us. Just played drums on one yesterday. And we are making it available for people to actually go find and download and use those tracks.
Okay, so, cool.
It is a cool thing, but
it's a testament to niching. Like in this one, you say we are direct to creator marketplace that helps independent songwriters and recording artists to become commercially, financially successful. So there's a lot of key words in there, like a lot of key keywords and hot points that are in there that are like triggers and challenges for artists. So yeah, another great example.
Yeah, if they're not an independent songwriter or artist right now, they're going to pass on it. And that's fine because we think we're going to capture those people later. But it has to grow with the base of people who are the right customer for it, who aren't shackled by record labels and publishing deals and other things. So it's pretty cool.
I love that. Now, there is something I'd love to circle around just briefly on that we talked about earlier, and that is the like niching on the type of project, like complex sites versus marketing sites. Is that something that just comes up organically as you figure out the need of a client and then you feel like, okay, yeah, we could handle that? Or do you make it clear at any point that you do like these type of like, do you like bucket your types of projects to like, simple, advanced, complex, or how does that work for you as far as the niching process? Or is that just internal, like a level back?
No, I think it's fair to say we're pretty public about it. So on our pricing page, for example, you'll see 2 prices listed right there. They are starting at prices. Thank you, Josh Hall. They are definitely starting at prices, but we have the starting at for our, and we've talked about this before. We're numbers people, right? We like numbers. And so you can go to my website right now and look at the numbers. So might as well share them here so you don't have to. We have 2 sort of starting packages. And so right now we charge $297 a month minimum for a marketing style website. And then on the site, we list what those are typically going to include. And then we charge $697 minimum for sort of the e-learning membership sort of site. And then setup fees may apply as well. And so that's a little bit more niched into the subscription web design angle, but we do on some kind of sites request a setup fee to help with that. But it's a small set. The setup fee is much smaller than what even the 50% down is going to be for most people selling websites with the traditional model. I
like the distinction here between, it's pretty clear, marketing or learning. Like those are the niches that you've identified here as far as persona and then type of project, marketing style sites and learning type of sites. Now, marketing, would an e-commerce fit into marketing? Because $300 a month for an e-commerce site sounds awfully, I was going to say, like I almost feel like there could be a third tier for some sort of e-commerce, or again, is that more of like a level back once you get going?
Yeah. It's a good question. A lot of the, admittedly, a lot of the e-commerce that we do ends up being for the one of the white label partners that we work with. Okay. So it's not that this might be something that needs to change in 2023, because right now, and as you can imagine with Buy Demo Tracks, it's kind of funny because Buy Demo Tracks is literally the culmination of everything I've learned how to do with a website in the last 7 years. Sales funnels, membership, redirection and all of that. We're even adding credits.
It's very mature. It looks like a mature site. Yeah.
There's a credit system in place that works with WooCommerce where people can download or they can buy upload credits, and then they burn those credits when they want to upload a song. Very complex. And so we can do extremely complex e-commerce, but admittedly, it is not a very forefront part of our marketing right now. And I think probably that should change because of how experienced we are. I mean, so we have a site that we did that it's not really one just for reasons that we can talk about later, but it's not really one that I can share a link to. But it's a site that is a complex culmination of the two. It's a learning site, but they also requested that each course be able to be individually purchased. And so it is a huge e-commerce and learning site. Right. And so we're so experienced on that, just to be honest, that I think we need to start marketing that more. Definitely. Gotcha. E-commerce does not fit into a marketing site. By a marketing hub, which I think is how I have it languaged there, a marketing hub is a site that is directed to get people into your products, services, programs. If you have students, it's just the marketing side of it. If you want advanced functionality on your site, that's when you're starting at that other tier, be it learning, membership, e-commerce, or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. So, and I think for anyone who's curious about different tiers, as far as like niching by tier, you could probably put learning like as a subcategory under that. Like maybe that is a advanced tier. Like maybe you'll have starting or basic and then like an advanced, and then you could put learning, e-commerce, things like that. But either way, yeah. I mean, I think because your ideal customers at this point, Steve, it's like it's pretty clear you're helping people with marketing sites or learning style sites. So that's fine. And it's working. So by golly, if it's working, yeah.
We've done, and so it works actually because we've done very little product, like physical product based e-commerce. We've done a little bit of that again with our white label person, but most of it has actually been just buying people's courses or buying their membership sites. So it's the sort of e-commerce that sort of, works together with the learning management stuff that we're doing already. And so that's where you say on the back end, you said, is that a level back? Well, I guess kind of, because like in the setup fees, we're accounting for the fact that we have to add e-commerce to be able to sell the membership site on the website. So yeah, that's true. That's happening sort of on the back end. Of course, the client is made aware of that.
Okay.
But it's not so much a front end thing. It's more of a back end thing.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating, man. Yeah. I mean, again, we've really kind of gone in and around the different ways to niche outside of just by category or by industry. So this has been really enlightening for me. I hope it has for everyone else, with just the idea of being able to, and having the freedom to like niche by business model or by tiers or by, types of projects, by persona. And again, I want to reiterate the messaging standpoint. Like messaging and copy have such an impact on attracting the right type of people.
So huge.
I'm curious, out of all this, as we get ready to wrap this one up, Steve, what is your favorite? Like we've talked a lot about these different types of niching options, these counterintuitive approaches. Do you have a personal favorite? Is there, of all the brands that you have moultiple sites? I don't know how you keep all this in track. I'm a little stressed out having all of your websites open, and I'm sure we haven't done all of them on my browser. But you have steveshramm.co, you have northmaxservices.com, your web design agency. You have subscription webdesign.com, which is right now just to your course, your subscription web design course, which is
that's actually to my mentorship. That's to my mentorship.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is the course under that as well, or is the course under Steve Shramm?
It should be. The course is under steveshramm.co. I need to move them together, and I will one day. But
gotcha.
Yeah.
But then you have by demo track. So of all, you have a bunch of different brands. This is a culmination of, years of experience and to this point. And again, we've already talked about the fact that you've scaled, so you have the bandwidth to handle this. But what has been your favorite? I mean, you've niched by subscription, you've niched by the demo recording. Like, what's been your favorite?
That's a good question. So I will answer that question. Let me also say too, if you want to, if there's time, I don't know if there's time, we could talk through at least one way of practically figuring out what your niche might be, given everything that we've talked about, if you wanted to dive into that. I would say, to answer the question as to which is my favorite, I guess time will tell. The fact that I live at a time, I'll tell you what my favorite thing is overall, is the fact that I live at a time that makes all of this stuff possible. The fact that I'm, it's like, again, one of my favorite Bible verses says, the steps of the man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. And the point there being that I have the freedom and the lifestyle and the ability to try different things and see what works. And that is my favorite thing. Business, right, is my favorite thing. It's being able to own this business and own that business and plant seeds over here and watch that grow, and plant seeds over here and watch that grow. it's hard not to have a little bit of a special place in my heart for just the straight up Northmac Services brand that works on e-commerce and learning and membership sites mostly, because that's, if you will, the first thing that worked. Like that gave me the taste of like, this is a business that now look at, if you saw like a lot of people who are listening to this right now, like if you saw what I paid in payroll for people to be able to do this every month, you'd probably have a heart attack. But the reality is that I can still pay myself what my family needs to live, even after paying for other people to do most of the fulfillment work. And that's the holy grail right there. And still, I'm still handling most of the sales stuff, right? People are still coming to me and I'm very much involved in it. I'm getting into the technical nitty gritty, although sometimes I try my best to leave that to Christian and Sam and the others who work for me. But it's the most fun to just be able to lead the team and to hear things like, Steve, like your business has changed my life. Like people who are working with me because of how much work I'm able to give them. Hearing, like I had one of my guys, my project manager, had me record a video that they just played at he and his wife's wedding, and they were like so grateful. And he's like took pictures of like me on the big screen with my video sharing, and that's what's cool, helping to develop people and in the service of even your clients, and hearing my clients come back to me and say, oh my gosh, like working with these guys is absolutely incredible. This is like nothing I've ever experienced before. That's my favorite. You know, that's what's super duper cool. And I love all the businesses. I just love the ability to be in business and start to see things work. And what's cool about it is the more you do it, the more it just works. I don't know another way to explain it. It's almost like magic. It's almost like magic.
And I think your point of like, this was the first thing that worked. It's kind of how I feel about my maintenance plan course. It's still personally, it's my favorite because it was the first one and it worked. And I've seen people like I've seen you utilize it and, you know, like make it their own and thrive with it. So like, I feel the same way. I think I'm sure it's the same as a web designer. Like I remember some of my first sites that are still there today. And they're like, it still works. It still looks good. It's not perfect. It's not like amazing, but it's damn good. And it's like, it works. So you have like a soft spot for us. That's cool. That's cool to hear. Yeah, I do. It's neat. It's changed my life. I mean, the stuff that we're doing with Buy Demo Tracks, for example, just wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the fact that I've got guys like Christian has been instrumental and Christian, by the way, if you don't know, he does work with Josh and does work with me. He's amazing. He's been instrumental in making some of the more technical aspects of that site work. And it's like without the experience and the connections and all of, and frankly, the time. I mean, I've got probably over 100 hours of my own time in working just on the site, let alone conversations with my business partner and actually growing the business and working and stuff like that. None of that would have been possible to do if I was either working a full-time job somewhere or if I was doing all the web design work, all the fulfillment work in my own business. And so it all just sort of works together. And I'm just tremendously grateful to be in this position. That's awesome, man. Well, I want to end with maybe like a motivational minute or a quick tip on how to niche. Since you mentioned that would be great. So let's end with that. Before we do though, I think it's probably fair to say steveshramm.co is probably the best place to go. Is that where you'd like everyone to go, particularly for this audience, web designers? You got some resources there. You are my go-to person for learning more about the subscription web design model. Because I did not go that route, I have a lot of thoughts on it and some high-level stuff, but I didn't get into the weeds of that model, which is why I'm so glad that we connected and I've seen it work for you. Like early on, I was kind of curious. I was like, let's see how this plays out. Let's see how this works. And it has worked really well for you. Now, you don't have to go that route. We've talked about it before. You mentioned it earlier. It can be an add-on. It can be an option, but I feel like once you get to a place where you feel like it's a good fit, it is definitely a worthwhile style model. So all these will be linked in the show notes, but I'd recommend everyone check out steveshramm.co. To you, Steve, for everyone who's like, okay, I love these counterintuitive approaches of niching, but I'm just not sure like the first step. What would be your recommendation?
Okay. Yeah. Well, the big recommendation would be to start with a discovery mindset. Do that. Throw things at the wall, see what sticks. Like you need to try lots of different things to see what you like, to see what works. By the way, sometimes you'll find out that the thing that works is not necessarily the thing that you like, at least not at first. You might have to grow to like it. One wake-up call you will get in business real quick is that not everybody wants what you have to sell, right? The thing that you think people want is not necessarily what they want. And in fact, another hard lesson that you're going to learn is not everything that you want or that your clients say that they want is even something that they actually are willing to pay for. You'll find people raise their hand and say, yeah, I'd be totally interested in that. And you say, well, here's a sales page. And then you never hear from them again. So a lot of times what works is just simply what people will actually end up paying for and getting out there. So you do have to start with that discovery mindset. And then I guess after that, the biggest tip I would give is to choose a filter. I have a podcast episode, and maybe what we can do is I can just sort of hint at this, and then we can link people to that podcast episode if that's okay with you,
Sure.
that they might be interested. It's because it's about a 20 or 30 minute podcast where I literally explain the process, how to do this. It's an episode of my subscription web design podcast. And basically I talk about, after you start with the discovery mindset, you need to choose a filter. And I'll explain those on the episode, but the 4 filters that you can choose from are the passion filter, the data filter, the financial filter, or what I call the logical filter. So you can actually use one of these 4 filters or multiple to help determine which route of niching you could go, or at least ones that you should try. And then I have some more things in that episode that you can find, but that's a place to start, is to choose a filter for how you're going to niche after you start with the discovery mindset.
And what episode? I'm looking at the discography right now. Of that.
Yep, sure. It's episode, let's see. It's episode number, I have this pulled up. Oh, so it's episode number 14. It's called The Definitive Guide to Niching Down, a Practical 3-Step Process.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have that linked in the show notes for sure, because I think that's a very worthwhile extra add-on to this conversation with how to do it. There we go. I got it now. So yeah,
it's the logical next step to what we've talked about here for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I mean, we could have had a conversation all around that, but I'm kind of glad that we talked counterintuitive approaches, because this was enlightening for me, man. I hope it was for everybody. That, again, just to reiterate one final time, niching is not just you build dentist websites. It's like there's so many layers to niching that you can do. I know it's overwhelming sometimes, but by golly, it's also empowering too, because you don't have to necessarily niche in one exact way. So Steve, man, thank you for your time. As always, I'm so pumped up about just your passion and fire for what you do. You are very charismatic and on fire. And it's very clear that you love what you do. You're a shining example, man, of how to do this well. And then how you built your web design business. And then once you got to that point, you scaled. And then now you're a full-blown webpreneur and you're doing all these different things and having a good time doing it. So yes, man, take some time off the rest of this week, play some Marvel Lego. And man, I'm excited to have round 3, and we'll dive into something even more in detail. We'll have some fun. So thanks again, man.
That sounds good. Thanks, man. Lots of thoughts about lots of things. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you do here for us. It's awesome.
Awesome, man. And did you officially change your middle name to Steve Subscription Shramm yet? Is that still?
It is in all of my subscription web design emails that go out from that company have Steve Subscription Shramm as the thing, and then the tagline below Steve Subscription Shramm is the best kind of. It says, "Don't forget, the best kind of client is the one that pays you every month forever." So that's kind of the closing signature to all of my emails. So thanks to you again, Josh.
That's beautiful, man. What a great way to end it. Thanks, dude. Talk soon. Hey friends, it's Josh here. I just wanted to mention a couple quick things before you head out. First off, if you've been enjoying the show, please consider leaving a podcast review. I personally read all the podcast reviews. I love hearing your thoughts and feedback on the show, and it also really helps grow this podcast. You can do that easily if you go to joshhall.co/podcast review, and you can leave a review wherever you listen to the show. And then I also wanted to make sure you know that for all the extras on every one of these podcast episodes, you can go to joshhall.co/podcast. We have a post there for every episode, which includes full transcriptions, timestamps, and all the links and resources that we mentioned. So just go to joshhall.co/podcast for all the extra goodies. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next episode.